get ready to spring into action in this week's episode of One Piece, which was filled to the brim with punches, kicks, sword slashes, and massive explosions. If you like a lot of action scenes, you're gonna like this week's episode of One Piece. If you like story progression, you might be a little disappointed by this one. That being said, I still think this was a wholly entertaining episode of One Piece, which really poured on the badass, manly action. And there were a lot of different action scenes, which really made this episode feel nice and brisk. There's also some really nice surprises at the end, but we'll get to that. Let's go ahead and just start with the opening of Zoro versus Pika, which is pretty much just more of the same. Pika's constantly transforming into the mountainside, shooting spikes out from all over the place, and Zoro is dodging them and cutting them up. However, there is this one cool scene where Zoro ends up getting right in his face and literally just destroying it all with a couple of sword slashes. Really, this is just more of a build-up to their epic battle. One battle that keeps surprising me in the One Piece anime series when compared to the manga one is the battle between Kyros and Diamante. In the manga, I thought it was okay, but in the anime, it is incredibly entertaining and one of the most unique settings for a battle that I've ever seen in the entire series. And considering how weird this show is, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Not only do we have some good fighting choreography between the two, but we also have this unique setting, which is the flower field, which is being manipulated by Diamante, literally turning it into this like wavy field that Kyros can barely even stand on. And while this is going on, Diamante is trying to attack both Kyros and Rebecca at the same time, and damn, Diamante is such a psychopathic bastard. All he wants to do is kill Rebecca so that he can make sure that Kyros sees that, so that he had killed both Scarlet and Rebecca. I'm also a really big fan of how they're animating Diamante's abilities, because in the manga, I never really had an idea of how speedy they were going to be, but seeing them in the anime, the way they zigzag all over the place and twirl around like a whip, it's a really dangerous looking weapon, and Kyros is at an extreme disadvantage because of the moving ground and the fact that he only has one leg, so I really cannot wait to see how he's going to be able to take on Diamante. The main course of this week's episode is Luffy versus Bellamy, and Doflamingo and Treble tag-teaming Trafalgar Law. The battle scene with Luffy and Bellamy is handled pretty well, although it hasn't concluded quite yet. I feel that they could have ended it in this week's episode, although they are sticking pretty close to the manga version. What's really cool about this episode, though, is we finally get to see Bellamy actually attacking Luffy, aside from just bouncing all over the walls and constantly talking about his principles. And there are a few unnecessary flashbacks with Bellamy. However, they are good for viewers who don't know much about the character, for those who haven't seen this guy in a long time. Despite that, I really love the scene where Bellamy started attacking Luffy with his hockey-infused punches. There was a lot of hard impact in all of those hits, and they looked really cool. And then there's Doflamingo and Treble, who are just destroying Law. Like, they're just using all of their big attacks and continuously beating him, stabbing him, and then literally lighting him on fire. I cannot believe the dude is even still alive at this point, especially because he probably should have died from blood loss, but then again, anime logic. But what I really love about this is just the atmosphere behind it all, especially how at the beginning, Law is just trying to escape, and there's just nothing he can do to get away, and as soon as he turns around, you see Doflamingo, and he's all covered in blue, and all you can see is the red of his glasses. Something about that scene, to me, was just really damn freaky. But even though the episode mostly focused on Luffy and Bellamy, I think the real star of this week's episode is Gladius. His final scene at the end of the episode was truly explosive. He's trying to take out everyone around him, especially Cavendish, and he's getting ready to set off all of these bombs, which are continuing to blow up all around him, and these things are freaking massive. So Cavendish tries to run away, he sees Bartolomeo hanging out behind the glass in his barrier, and he's trying to beg him to get inside, but Bartolomeo doesn't even give a crap, and then before you know it, Gladius unleashes the power of his Pop Rock Fist! Boom! And what a symphony of explosions it truly is, destroying everything around it and leading to our to-be-continued screen. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? This one was pretty good despite the fact that it was in many ways kind of a filler episode. There were a lot of things here that were definitely drawn out, but there were a lot of really cool moments, and the artwork and the animation looked pretty good for the most part, especially during the whole Kyros versus Diamante scene and Gladius's big explosion. But I still think the Luffy versus Bellamy fight is pretty cool, especially because Bellamy's actually hitting Luffy for once. This is a really big deal for the character, and it's also just still incredibly depressing. I really wish that he would give up his pride and his principles, and he would just join Luffy, because, I mean, this is just really unnecessary at the moment. But still, Bellamy has to stick to his principles, very similar to how Luffy was sticking to his when he was beating the crap out of him back in the day and in those flashbacks. However, my favorite scene was definitely at the end, getting to see Gladius get into action. That big explosion was really awesome, and I still just love the character. His overall design and his moveset is really unique. I mean, we've seen characters who can make things explode, but I really love the fact that whatever he touches will, like, just start to inflate and create this massive explosion. He doesn't care about anyone that's around him, his subordinates. He just wants to take all of these guys out. He's definitely one of the most ruthless members of the Don Quixote family. And speaking of which, Treble and Doflamingo just destroying Law this week, just... damn, that's depressing as hell, getting to see Law come down to this level. It's just so freaking messed up, especially because after Doflamingo hit him with that one big attack where these 5 strings went right through his body, that's pretty much it for Law. I really just don't see him doing that much more in this arc. What I will say is this week's episode was really exciting despite the fact that it was slightly long-winded, but it had good animation, good artwork, great action, and lots of varied action, so that's what made it pretty impressive. And next week's episode looks like it's going to be really cool. Is Cavendish going to survive? Spoil it for yourself and watch the preview. It'll pretty much give it all away. What I will say is, I like this episode right here. It wasn't perfect, but it was still really entertaining to me, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Check it out, One Piece fans. If you're reading the manga or watching the anime, check out this week's episode. You might see something you like. Before you guys leave today, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of One Piece. Did you have a favorite action scene? Do you think Cavendish is going to survive? Or you've probably already seen the preview, you know what's going to happen. And what do you want to see from the rest of the Dressrosa arc? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and all that jazz. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!